Okay, so here we are, 66 Impala. So we're going to dig into the lower windshield area here for now. So we'll get to see about getting this piece together. So we should be able to piece this together in just sections. All right, and that should hopefully eliminate any kind of warpage or anything like that. I'm trying to do this all in one piece, at least with the facilities that I have, is definitely not an option. So yeah, we'll just do some select chunks here and get to her. Okay, so here's our first piece that we've cut out here. This is, I think, probably the worst spot here along the whole section. But anyway, underneath that, in between this inner panel and the outer dash panel here, is this kind of rubbery type sealer stuff. And to me, when the water started getting in there, this basically, it acted just like a sponge and kept the water in there. And of course that caused all of this kind of nastiness in here. And so that, you can see from under here. So gotta do a little bit of fixing here now too on the inside. The rest of it on the inside looks to be okay. Once we dig into that side, we might find something different, but the rest of that, at least this inner piece here, seems to be good. It's just this section here. So I've got to do something with that first, I think. And yeah, we'll get to do some more digging here. So. Okay, so still kind of digging at this a bit. Like I say, it gets a little bit involved in here, especially when you get stuff like this down underneath, your main metal there. So basically, what I've done, like say, when I'm doing stuff like this, especially in this spot, you get multiple layers and all that. I keep the pieces I've cut out until the job's done. So just so I know, kind of where things went at the time. So in order to expose this, of course, I've cut out this piece of the cowl right here. What I'm going to do with this, like this piece here is good. It's this edge right here, of course, that was rusted out, down underneath this seam is where that is. And so basically, this piece here, you can kind of see where it went, kind of in there like that, right? And so you're getting this dug out. So now basically what I'm going to do with this piece, I'm going to actually reuse this piece. I'm just going to cut this off right on this edge and then weld in another piece that's basically pointing down, down here kind of thing. Get it ground down, and then it'll be easy to keep this shape here, where these little bends are, and it's just from here to basically right on this end at this point that we just replace this edge here, so that when we get this all back together, then there's of course metal here again to spot weld to. But once I get this piece in, then this will actually lay right back down right exactly where it came out of, and then we'll just weld right along that seam, grind it down flat, and then we'll continue on to the next section. Okay, so different day. I wasn't able to keep going the other day there, so other things to be done, but anyway. So this is what we're looking at. So you got multiple levels of metal in here. Right, so go back out here. So basically what you're looking at is there's a seam here. You've got inner cowl coming up here, and then another piece coming up in here. These two overlap, I think, by about a good 1.5 inches or so, something like that. And then they go down, of course, down inside. So basically you've got two pieces that kind of make up this inner dash piece, I guess, here. And then I don't want to cut into this corner anymore here, because this is all structure. I don't want to touch this, because then you get into kind of other nastiness of trying to keep stuff straight or whatever. But this is because, and this is good, right? So I mean, you can plainly see it's still solid. A little bit of rust here, that's fine. But basically what I'm going to have to do just for this section here is I'm going to be cutting it right on this edge, and basically going to be cutting through two pieces here, kind of right in here. And then once I've gotten to this point, I'll have to switch to inside underneath here. So basically we're going to be into kind of about this part. It's about this, right about here, and I'm going to have a cut from in here over and then up, just to kind of get all of this piece here. What maybe I'll do is I can see some of the spot welds that are up in here. Kind of one there's one in the end. I might see, maybe I'll cut this piece, this inner piece right from here, kind of all the way into about here, and then up, so that I can take this piece out and then reveal this piece behind it, right there. And then I should be able to, I'll at least be able to weld from in here, this piece. Once this is replaced, get this replaced in here, get it all welded up, and then I can put this piece right back in where it was, and weld right along here, spot weld and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, let's see how we make out with this. So here we go. Didn't come out as pretty as I wanted it, but it's still usable. So, there's the piece we were trying to get at right there. Alright, well, this is what we're working with here. So, cut out this piece here just to get at, which I am going to put right back in this spot, but and to gain access to this piece right here, which is right, of course, underneath this outer piece here, I guess, if you want to call it that. Anyway, so got that trimmed out right there, and of course a little piece down in here. This is where a spot weld was, but it was rusted right beside it. Right up back in the back corner there, I don't know if you can see that very well, but there's a little bit of rust back up in there, but it's not anything I don't think is going to be a problem. So I've actually sprayed the Eastwood rust encapsulator. I sprayed a bunch of it right up in there, coated it really well, and that, so that'll at least keep whatever's in behind here from rusting out anymore. And that, but yeah, so with that, now I can just kind of start piecing this back together here. So I'm actually starting with just this little piece right here, just to kind of have that guy pop right in there, kind of sort of something like that. Anyway, So yeah, I'll just weld that little piece in there. Right. Like I say, it's a little bigger than it needs to be, but anyway, I'll weld that in, and then trim it off so it's nice and straight through here, and then that will then lead to recreating this piece, which will fit, of course, right across here, right into, you can kind of, there's the inner part of this seam here. So that's from basically this corner here goes right here. So we'll recreate just this piece right in through here, and of course we'll be welding from inside on this one anyway, at least out to this point here, and then I can, it's real easy to start welding on this side. Once I get that piece in there, then we move on to the other side, which is this guy. So that guy comes out of there. So we'll recreate this piece and get that welded back in, and then we rebuild all this outer stuff here, and then move on to the next bit. So yeah, here we go. Okay, so here's our little piece done here. So essentially this is the piece that came out from back and behind here like this. So I'm going to try and imagine it kind of sitting sort of like that. Alright, so that's kind of where how it sits underneath all of this. The piece I just put in replaced this little doodad right here. Alright, so that was right in there. So now basically I've got more or less a straight across piece to build right up in here. So basically what it looks like from underneath is right there. So you can see where where one of the spot welds was from this other inner piece here. So anyway, that's got that kind of sort of straight-ish, if you want to call it, all the way out here. So basically now I rebuild this piece in here up to this point. All right, just weld that in there, and then we can recreate this piece, which is this guy. That'll go in there, kind of sort of like that, and then we will weld this piece back in. Once that's all in position and everything, then we can weld this piece right back in where it went, and should be able to use the original spot weld locations. Not too much problem, and put that all back together there, and you know, kind of straighten things out. So yeah, here we go. All right, so here's what we got so far on this first piece. I'm gonna weld it up in here. Still doing a little bit of grinding in here, but that's fine. But we're right to the spot here where this piece from here will come over, and it will actually overlap just like the other one, right down on this seam here. So that should work okay. And now I'll just finish up touching up weld all the way into the end here, kind of sort of like that. So we'll just finish that up, grind it down as best we can. It's a bit of a bad spot to get into, but get that ground down, and then we'll treat all this with some rust encapsulator all up in here, just to make sure that rust doesn't come back at all. So yeah, keep going with that, and show you after. Okay, so there's that inner piece in. Definitely not pretty, but in here it doesn't need to be. But anyway, that's the first chunk in there done. So now I'll be welding this piece back in here in a minute. But on the outside, this is kind of what it looks like on the outside here. So there you go. So I'll clean that up a little bit there. To get this groove in here, basically all I did was I had this piece laying on the vise, and took my kind of rounded off chisel there, and just had the vise open about half an inch or so, and then just used my hammer and just pounded it in just enough just to make that, just to remake this ridge in here. And so yeah, it seems to have worked out pretty good, so I'll continue doing that with this piece once I get to putting that in. But yeah, get to welding in that inner piece back in. All right, there we go. That's about as pretty as she's gonna get under here. So got this piece welded back in where it was before. So it's all nice and solid now. So we're just gonna treat it with some primer and throw some rust encapsulator up in here just to make sure, and kind of spray it back up in here as well. And that should take care of that corner. Anyway, so this is how I've basically been making these couple of pieces here with the ridge in it. So essentially just in the vise, got the vise opened up about half an inch or so there, and then marked a line where I wanted the ridge to be, and then basically just worked it with my chisel here, and just pounded it, one piece at a time all the way around with my hammer there. And then yeah, just kind of worked it back and forth, and kind of then just made sure that these edges here were still flat. It's still flexible enough that I can get a little bit of curve out of it that I need. But yeah, that's basically all I had to do to make that piece. So see about fitting her in here now. All right, there we go. There's our test piece. Got it fitted in here, so start tacking her in here and get her done. Okay, so there's that piece in there now. I'll weld it up. Looking not too bad. Had a couple of blow-throughs up in here, but got them filled in without too much problem. And then from the inside, looks like I get some good penetration there, which is definitely one of the main things. So looking good. So I'll scrub that up a little bit, and then we'll treat all this in here with primer and some rust encapsulators, that kind of thing, and that'll stop that all rusting in there. So now we can work on putting this piece back in, and show you that here. All right, so there's this piece again. So this guy's going to go right back in here like this, but got to do a little. That'll work on this edge first. Get this cleaned up so that get a new piece welded on, kind of along here. As much as I would love to remake this, I definitely haven't got the fancy benders and stuff like that. So we'll just make do with what we got. So anyway, get to working on this piece here now. Alright, so there's our piece of wiper cowl right there. It's going to be going back in. So of course we've trimmed off this edge right here, And there's kind of what's left of that, so not a heck of a lot. So basically all we did is got a piece of stock steel here. Took this guy, put it right on its edge, kind of sort of like this, and then literally just traced along that edge, so that once I've cut along here, of course, on this side of the line, and then it should just take maybe just a little bit of shaving just to make it match this edge right here, just right. And so then then I'm going to weld it right along here, just spot weld it all the way along where it needs to be. And then once that part's done, then I can trim along here, or well, basically right along the bottom here, to leave a good half-inch, half-inch overhang kind of thing like this all the way along, and then that should give us enough to spot weld back onto once we get the bottom of the windshield part done there. So yeah, get along and get doing with that. Okay, so after the boring part, grinding and cutting and all that, this is basically what we've got. So we've got that edge recreated there on our cowl piece, like this. Not too bad, got some good penetration, still got to clean up on the back a bit, but that's fine. We'll get that done and treat her with some primer and that. And so that is going to fit right down in here, kind of sort of like that. So looking not too bad. So, and then there's the edge where we're eventually going to spot weld the bottom of the dash where the windshield goes. So yeah, we'll get this primed up and start tacking her in. Okay, so there's our wiper cowl back in there. That piece is in there okay. So again, treat this with primer and stuff. Now we're working on this piece and this piece basically in here. Now if I had one of those fancy shrinker stretcher machines, then I could probably make this in one piece and use the shrinker stretcher to kind of make this piece kind of come around like this, right? And then you got your curve and all that kind of stuff in there. But well, we're just gonna have to finesse her the best we can here. So so basically I'm gonna template, see if we can get a piece of cardboard in here, try and get some kind of a template going on here for this piece, and then And then we'll cut a separate piece for along this bottom edge where it gets spot welded down. And yeah, let's see what we can come up with here. Alright, there's our first dash piece. So got that trimmed up fairly decent. A little wide in here, but that's okay. We'll should be able to fill that in without too much problem. But yeah, got that fitting in there. So next I'm actually gonna, now I'm gonna make this piece in here. But I'll have to wait till tomorrow morning. It's getting a little late today, so yeah, see you tomorrow. Alright, new day. So now we're recreating this piece right on this edge here. And so this old piece here, of course, it had this little funky piece right here, kind of holds over top of the wiper cowl. I'm not sure if it's like a manufacturing thing for support when they're actually putting it in. Would be my guess, but anyway, it's definitely factory, so we'll put it back the way it was. And so I'm not going to need this piece, of course, so all we're doing is recreating from basically here all the way to this edge here. About a half-inch wide piece, so get to trimming and recreate that. Alright, so here's what we got. Here's what we've come up with for this piece here on the leading edge of the wiper cowl. So got her sprayed down with some weld-through primer on the bottom side. Also treated the bottom side of this piece here, so we're just going to start spotting this piece in first, get it set where it needs to be, and then we'll start putting this guy in right along this bottom edge here on there. So here we go. Alright, so getting her spotted in here, just going nice and slow, just doing a few welds, keeping the heat down, grinding them down as I go here, and then making sure that everything's staying flush, and making sure there's no warpage there. So yeah, once we get this finished in, then we'll start on this piece here. So use this piece. Yeah, there we go. All welded in. Definitely took a little bit of time. Like I say, if had a shrinker stretcher, would have been able to probably make this piece probably in one shot instead of, you know, 2 separate pieces. But looking good there now. At least this corner is done. So we'll treat her with some primer here, keep her covered up, and then yeah, we'll keep going on and move on to part 2 of the lower windshield. So get to her.